Section 2.2 is about Portugal and the trade that they have. Portugal is going to be the #1 country that will be important for the exploration into the Western Hemisphere. The influence in Portugal all starts with this individual right here to the left. João I, also known as John I by the English. In 1385, he is the King of Portugal. He is curious about religion and the sea. He really has this passion about learning. And he is fascinated with what the sea can do. And this fascination is going to be pushed down into his son, Henry the Navigator. What happened is João's first 2 sons die at sea. And so Henry the Navigator, 1394 to 1460, he is going to be the one who's going to push for new engineering, new shipbuilding, and a new trade into what can come out of the sea. He learned about the sea, he learned about gold, the slave trade, so there's a lot that he is interested in. And one of the big things that he does is he establishes Sagres Point. Sagres Point is it was known as the Academy at Sagres Point, but there was only one student, and that was Henry the Navigator. He will establish this academy where he brings in geographers, instrument makers, shipbuilders from all over the world. And he brings them in to teach him about engineering so he can design a new ship, a new way to go out into the sea and explore for that of Portugal itself. Now, it is Henry the Navigator that's going to bring Portugal into the slave trade. So he gets involved in the slave trade because of shipbuilding and that kind of thing. In what he does, he designs a new type of ship. And this ship is going to be the one here at the bottom. Traditionally, beforehand, you had the trireme. The trireme, this is the ship that the Romans and the Greeks had. It's low, it's flat, lots of openings, as you can see in the picture. It's good for calm waters because it was wind and paddle powered. So you'd have a whole bunch of people rowing at it to get it to go places. You didn't have to worry about if there was no wind. Now, Henry, he understands that you cannot take a trireme out into the ocean. It'll flood and it'll sink. So he's going to design the caravel. And the caravel is thin and it's tall, where the trireme kind of sits on top of the water. The caravel is going to cut through the water. And so he's going to seal up all openings for rough weather. It is only sail and wind powered though, which becomes a problem. The issue here is if you get calm waters, what happens? And your boat just doesn't go anywhere. It's dependent on the way the ship is, the sea is going at the time. So there's not a lot you can do if there's calm waters. So, but the caravel is going to allow Portugal to go westward. And it is the caravel that's going to get Columbus into the Western Hemisphere. He is going to promote Arabian astronomical calculations as well. There is a change in the way sails are made, where they were square sails for the Romans and the Greeks. He's going to change them to triangles to better catch the wind. So it is these things that's going to get Portugal involved and become a major superpower in that of the growing part of this new world. And with these ships, you have a change in trade for Portugal. As you can see here, 1453, the Silk Road is going to close. No longer is China going to allow any individuals from Europe to come via land routes into that of Asia. And so they're going to be forced to find new ways around this. Also, throughout the Mediterranean Sea, these countries have wised up and said if people are coming from Western Europe into through the Mediterranean and down to get to India, they're going to charge them. Every single port is going to charge them to try to earn money. So Portugal wants to go around Africa. In 1488, Bartolome Diaz. He's going to be the first one to round the Cape of Good Hope. It's going to take him about 2 years to get to India and back. And he's going to report that it is a viable route for individuals to get to India. You can sail through that. So in 1498, Vasco da Gama is going to repeat this. He's going to reach East Africa and India. In 1502, he's going to start taking armed ships for protection. And they're going to begin to establish fortified trade posts. So what they're going to do along the African coastline is about every 100 miles, they're going to establish a trade fort. And it's going to take them a little bit, 2-3 years to get all the way around the country. But what they have to do is they don't have to take a ship from Lisbon or Sagres Point all the way to Calcutta and back. They only have to have a ship go 100 miles. And so those ships would move back and forth between those two ports, those 100-mile ports. And so things would go from Calcutta to Mombasa, and then they only had to go to Mozambique. And then that ship would go back to Mombasa and back and forth and back and forth. So there starts to be this funneling of goods, this constant injection of goods from Asia into that of Western Europe. And these goods are going to allow Portugal, who now becomes very, very important because they own the ships. They're not telling anybody how these ships are made, what they need to create these things. They're keeping that secret to themselves. So Portugal becomes very, very rich. And it is these Portuguese ships that they're going to use to go westward. All right? So now we have piracy becomes very important. Piracy forces those fortified locations along the coastline to go from wooden locations, just wooden forts, into these big strongholds so that pirates will stop raiding these locations. And near Zimbabwe, this is where piracy is going to be the biggest thing, in right here between Madagascar and Zimbabwe. Madagascar is the big island there. Piracy is going to be a huge thing. So they really need to fortify these forts. And so Portugal becomes a superpower. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of goods coming in, and they're not sharing the secret of how they got it. So that's how Portugal becomes so important. So now we're going to move on to presentation 2.3.